Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this comprehensive update on the ongoing protests in Iran. Today, we bring you a detailed, lifestyle account of the unrest that has gripped the country, protests sparked by severe economic hardship and escalating into deadly clashes between demonstrators and security forces. This wave of unrest is one of the most serious Iran has seen in recent years, reflecting deepening crises that affect ordinary Iranians across the nation. We will explore the causes, timeline, key actors, recent developments, international reactions, and possible outcomes of these protests. Iran is currently experiencing growing unrest that began in late December 2025 and has continued into early January 2026. The demonstrations started in the capital, Tehran, with shopkeepers and merchants walking out in protest. Their primary grievance is the dramatic collapse in the value of the Iranian currency, the rial, which has weakened sharply against the U.S. dollar, exacerbating inflation and making basic goods far less affordable. Inflation has been hovering near and in some estimates above 40%, eroding purchasing power and deeply affecting everyday life. Ordinary Iranians are struggling to pay for essentials, and the rising cost of living has fueled anger and frustration across social and economic classes. The roots of the unrest lie in a combination of long-standing issues. Western sanctions have hindered economic growth, while government mismanagement and corruption have prevented meaningful reforms. Structural economic problems, such as dependency on oil revenues and lack of industrial diversification, compound the effects. These protests are a response to both immediate economic pressures and a broader sense of systemic failure. Initially focused on price hikes, wage stagnation, and employment challenges, the demonstrations quickly took on political dimensions as participants expressed dissatisfaction with the ruling system itself. What began with a handful of shopkeepers in Tehran soon spread across the country, reaching multiple provinces. Protests have been reported in Lorestan, Fars, Isfahan, Kermanshah, Khuzestan, Hamadan, and many other cities. Reports indicate that demonstrations have occurred in over 20 provincial centers, reflecting widespread dissatisfaction with both economic and political conditions. In many locations, protesters clashed with Iranian security forces. Law enforcement used tear gas, arrests, and crowd control measures, while demonstrators shouted slogans demanding economic relief and political reform. Videos circulating on social media show crowds confronting authorities with chants and slogans that some analysts describe as politically charged and critical of the ruling establishment. One of the gravest aspects of this wave of unrest is the loss of life. Multiple individuals have been killed amid clashes between protesters and security forces. Reports from human rights groups and independent news agencies indicate fatalities in Lorestan province, including confrontations near police stations, as well as in Isfahan and Khuzestan. Confirmed deaths include both civilians and members of the regime's paramilitary forces. While exact numbers remain difficult to verify due to communication restrictions, some estimates suggest that at least 10 people have been killed, and many more have been injured or detained. Arrests and detentions have been reported across multiple cities, as Iranian authorities attempt to stem the protests using forceful measures. While economic hardship is at the heart of the protests, analysts emphasize that the unrest reflects deeper political and social dissatisfaction. Many young Iranians, including university students, are using the protests to voice grievances beyond economic concerns. These include frustration with corruption, lack of political freedom, and broader questions about the legitimacy of the ruling system. Protesters have chanted slogans calling for systemic change, reflecting the view that their discontent goes far beyond immediate financial pressures. The mobilization has echoes of past waves of protest, such as the 2019 fuel price riots and nationwide demonstrations following the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022, though each wave has its unique context and triggers. The Iranian government has responded in multiple ways. Officials, including the president, have publicly acknowledged that some economic complaints are legitimate and have called for dialogue. At the same time, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has issued stern warnings, describing the unrest as a threat to national stability and emphasizing that rioters must be put in their place. Security forces have issued warnings to protesters and expressed determination to maintain order. Internet disruptions and limitations on communication have been reported in some areas, indicating an attempt by the authorities to control information flow during the unrest. International reactions have been varied. The United States has publicly expressed support for peaceful demonstrators and warned against excessive use of force. Some U.S. statements have suggested that the international community should pay close attention to Iran's treatment of protesters. These remarks have drawn sharp criticism from Tehran, which accused foreign governments of interfering in domestic affairs. European countries and human rights organizations have called for restraint, the protection of peaceful protest rights, and adherence to international norms. The United Nations has urged the Iranian government to respect citizens' rights to assembly and expression while refraining from excessive force. The protests have disrupted daily life in Iran. Businesses have closed, especially in major market areas such as Tehran's Grand Bazaar, where merchants continue strikes to show solidarity. Transportation and university operations have been affected in various cities, and tensions remain high in regions where clashes are most intense. Millions of ordinary Iranians are impacted not only by the unrest itself, but also by the underlying economic crisis, which has created widespread anxiety about the future. To understand today's events, it is important to consider historical context. Iran has experienced multiple waves of unrest in recent years. The 2019 gasoline price protests were met with harsh crackdowns, resulting in hundreds of deaths. The 2022 protests triggered by Mahsa Amini's death mobilized young Iranians and drew international attention to human rights issues. Other demonstrations, including strikes by bakers, truck drivers, healthcare workers, and other professional groups, have been ongoing responses to economic grievances. Today's protests form part of this larger narrative, revealing persistent dissatisfaction with governance, economic management, and political freedom. As the situation unfolds, the future remains uncertain. There are three broad possibilities. 1. The protests could escalate further, potentially spreading nationwide and leading to more significant confrontations with security forces. 2. The unrest could settle into a prolonged stalemate, with intermittent protests and limited government response. 3. The government might pursue a negotiated resolution, offering economic reforms or concessions to ease tensions and restore stability. The direction of events will depend on a combination of domestic economic developments, government decisions, and international responses. This moment in Iran reflects more than just economic hardship. It highlights a society grappling with questions about opportunity, governance, and personal freedoms. The protests show that ordinary citizens are increasingly willing to voice their frustrations publicly, despite the risks of arrest, injury, or even death. They also demonstrate the challenges faced by the government in addressing both economic needs and political discontent, while managing the potential international ramifications of unrest. The ongoing economic crisis has exacerbated the sense of urgency. Inflation and unemployment continue to affect millions, and everyday items such as food, fuel, and medicine are increasingly unaffordable for many families. For ordinary Iranians, the protests represent not only an immediate response to rising costs, but also a demand for a future that offers stability, opportunity, and security. The combination of economic pressure and political frustration has created a volatile situation where small sparks can ignite larger waves of unrest. In addition to urban centers, rural areas are also affected. In towns and villages across provinces like Lorestan and Khuzestan, residents have joined demonstrations expressing solidarity with city protesters. The decentralized nature of the unrest makes it difficult for authorities to contain, as grievances are shared widely across regions, generations, and social classes. The widespread participation underscores that these protests are not isolated incidents but part of a nationwide response to structural challenges. Social media has played a significant role in the protests. Despite government attempts to control the flow of information, videos, images, and live updates continue to circulate internationally. These communications provide real-time evidence of the protests, including confrontations with authorities and demonstrations of solidarity among citizens. Social media has also helped international communities track developments and express support for protesters, amplifying the voices of those affected. The human cost of the unrest continues to rise. In addition to fatalities, many have been injured or detained. Hospitals report an increasing number of patients with injuries related to clashes, including both protesters and security personnel. Families affected by deaths and arrests are facing immense challenges, while activists warn that excessive force by authorities could inflame tensions further and increase the potential for more serious conflict. International human rights organizations have condemned the use of violence against demonstrators and called for transparent investigations into deaths and arrests. They emphasize the importance of allowing citizens to express their grievances peacefully and warn that repression without addressing underlying issues may deepen the crisis. Analysts argue that the Iranian government must tackle both immediate economic concerns and broader structural reforms if it wishes to prevent future unrest. Observers note that the protests are fueled by both immediate hardships and long-term frustrations with governance. While the government has offered reassurances and promises of economic relief, many Iranians are skeptical, citing past unfulfilled commitments and ongoing corruption. This skepticism contributes to the persistence of the protests, as demonstrators continue to demand tangible change and accountability. In conclusion, the protests currently unfolding in Iran are serious, widespread, and rooted in deep social and economic dissatisfaction. Multiple people have already lost their lives, and the unrest continues to affect millions of citizens. These demonstrations reflect not only economic hardship, but a broader struggle within Iranian society over opportunity, governance, and freedom. As events continue to unfold, the situation remains fluid, and the response of both domestic authorities and the international community will play a crucial role in shaping the outcome. The future of these protests will depend on a combination of factors, including government action, economic developments, social dynamics, and international engagement. Whether the unrest escalates, stabilizes, or moves toward resolution, the voices of ordinary Iranians remain central to understanding the crisis. This moment is a stark reminder of the challenges faced by societies under economic and political strain and the human cost of unresolved grievances. We will continue to provide updates as verified information becomes available. It is essential to stay informed, understand the complexities of the situation, and recognize the courage of those who risk their safety to demand change. The protests in Iran are a defining moment in the country's recent history, highlighting both the struggles and the resilience of its people. As the story unfolds, the world watches closely, hoping for a resolution that addresses the root causes of unrest and ensures a better future for all Iranians.